Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I've got my wife's Hoyt charger in here. I've got it set up, and I'm gonna replace this D-loop she's had on it for a number of years. I had it in here earlier to fix a peep rotation issue, and I realized it's been quite a while since she's had this changed, and she's getting rid of the pink accessories and everything. So we're gonna tie a camo D-loop on, and I'm actually gonna do something. It's a variation of a soft knot. Most people take string material and tie knots in. I'm not a big fan of how most of the people do it. So I've never seen this method that I'm about to show you done on YouTube. It's kind of a variation of like what finger shooters do with recurves and like Olympic style archery. So what it's going to do is have string serving underneath here, and it'll give the new D-loop something to kind of grab a hold of and prevent it from sliding. So hopefully somebody can get some use out of this and do it to their own bow. I think it's a better way of doing it. So let's get the camera set up, and I'm going to show you close up on how I do it. All right, so here we go. First step, grab my D-loop material. Stuff I'm going to put on is this Cir-Cut Archery. This is a giant roll. It's more than I'll ever use in my entire life, but I like it. All right, so the first step we're going to look at is I'm going to take a look here at basically how much distance here that D-loop is going to take up. We're basically at like 8 millimeters, 8 or 9 millimeters from one end of the D-loop knot to the other. We'll say 10 millimeters. I'm not going to do anything fancy with moving this because I know it's good in the place that it should be. So the material I'm going to use on this is actually a spool of BCY 3D. It's a 0.016 diameter string. It's just standard white. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to unknot this here, and I'm going to tie just a little piece of the material right in the center of where that knock is going to be, just to mark where this knock was. I'm going to put a knot right in the center of where it was. I'm actually going to pull this out a little ways because I can reuse this. Make sure that's tight so it's not going to come off. That is the center of the knock. Carefully, I'm going to cut this D-loop off. And the way that I'm going to do it is you never want to cut down into the serving or into the string. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut right here on the top. If you can see where that D-loop comes over the top, I'm going to cut straight down into that. And it should pop right off fairly easily. I'm not sure what type this D-loop material was, but you can see there, it's come apart there. Now we've got the burnt tag end there, and we can untie, being careful. So I can see now where that knock was. This would be a great time to have a silver Sharpie, which I don't have, but that's all right. So I'll rotate this over and I'll show you again how I'm going to cut that off. Straight down through the D-loop material till it pops, and then stop. You want to stay away from that serving material. So this is a great example. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not. Let me see if I can find some serving. The serving here, when you tie a D-loop down tight, right onto the center serving, you can see right in here, that serving is starting to separate a little bit, and it's got indentations. So what we're going to do right now with this 3D is give something for the D-loop to tie into, to knock onto, or to grip down onto, I should say, without messing up or sliding. So I'm going to pull off, I don't know, how much is that? 2 feet worth of the 3D material. We're going to start there. And essentially what we're going to do, what we're going to start with, it's called a Clove hitch, if I can remember how to do this here. So basically you're going to loop over the string. One side is going to come up underneath like that. And the other side, you're gonna do the exact opposite. So it's very similar to how you tie a D-loop. So if you can see this, hold on, let me get it straightened out here. If you can see the way that this is looking, it's basically like a D-loop, except instead of doing both sides up, one side's gonna come down and the other side is gonna go up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna slide that knot right over to where that knock was, okay? So now that we have this one put in place, I'm gonna take a look real quick and just see how wide that knock is. So I can tell it's gonna have to come closer, this knot. So I'm gonna scoot that over just a little bit. This thing gets tight in a hurry. So let it loosen and come over just a tiny bit. That's the good thing about this knot. Okay. So now I've got that clove hitch right down on top. And at this point I could probably take my knock off. Yep, okay. So what I'm looking at here is when you put the knock on, or when I clip that knock on, I don't want it super, super tight up against the knock, but I want it just enough wiggle room that I know when I tie another one of these on this side, it's not gonna be too tight. So at this point, that first knot I tied in the center here, just to mark where my knock was. I can take this off if I can get it. This 3D likes to grip pretty tight. Okay, so at this point, I've got a clove hitch tied. That's gonna hold decently well until I go to do what I'm about to do, and I'm gonna show you. So one of these, as you can see, you've got one string going down, the other string going up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna tie in essentially what you do on the end of a serving here, and we're gonna go to the same direction. So for this one here, we're gonna put out probably, what did I say? It was about 10 millimeters. So we're probably gonna go, let's see, flip it around so you can see this. So we're gonna go probably 15 millimeters of wraps here. So the very first one we're gonna do is, you can see this one wants to go this way. So we're gonna continue that loop in the same direction, and we're gonna keep this tight, and we're gonna start wrapping just like we would an end serving with this portion of the thread, this portion of the knot. And essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay down a base. So that was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're gonna make sure that's tight up there. Actually, I'm gonna go back. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I want these to be as tight as possible. 1, 2, 3. So that gives me 8 wraps. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back serve this one. So we're gonna go, I'm gonna say we're gonna go 16 wraps. What's that gonna get me? 16 wraps, and then we're gonna go less on the top. So, I take that back. We're gonna do 20 wraps. So that was 8, 9, 10. And now, if you know how to back serve, keep this knot snug. If you know how to back serve, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in the same direction, but we're gonna loop over the top here, loop over the top, and then we're gonna go in through the loop that we're creating. And I'm gonna do another 10. Hopefully I have enough material. 1, 2. So all I'm doing is going through. 3. These are so hard to do. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's gonna get me basically what I'm gonna back serve on. So now at this point, if you can see what I've got here, I've got these back served. I'm gonna lay this string, the tag end of the string, over the wraps that I've already gotten tight, and we're gonna go around and create this tension knot here. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna go around keeping tension on the serving. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, trying to keep my hands out of the way. Get that tight up against the other bundle there. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now I've got my, all right, as you can see now, I've got my tag end right here. Actually, I'm gonna reach down, grab a set of pliers here, grab a hold of that thing with. All right, so now you can see I've got my 20 wraps, and that's gonna be the basis for this knot. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this, give it a turn, and we're gonna cinch that down through it. We're gonna pull this tag end down through itself. Ready? Trying to keep it tight. Okay? We're gonna pull it. I'm pulling it pretty hard. Okay. Now we've got 20 wraps going this direction, and on this bow, this is the bottom, I'm sorry, the top side. Here's the peep. Top side of the nocking point. Now we've got the other tag end here, and it's still good and tight. Now what we're gonna do is, instead of going the full distance, we're gonna go probably, we did 20 here, we're probably gonna do 7 and 7. So we're gonna do 7 wraps the opposite direction, and then we're gonna do 7 wraps basically to lock this one in. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna create a high spot right here on the front side where the knock would be, and then it's gonna taper down. So when we put the D-loop over it, it's gonna give you something that doesn't want to let the D-loop come together in the middle, and these things are not going anywhere. So now I just gotta remember which way we went with the first one. All right, so at this point, I can cut this tag end off. That's really good and tight. I'm gonna cut this tag end off. You're gonna pull it up tight, take a blade, and we're gonna cut just like that. Okay? Keep it away from all the other serving, all that good stuff. We don't want to nick anything. Okay, so now with the second string here, the other side of the clove hitch, we're gonna do the exact same thing. So we're gonna be going this way over top of these, and we're gonna go, if we did 20 here, we can do 7 and 7. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we're gonna go the opposite. We're gonna go do the same thing. We're gonna tie this off. We're gonna make a loop, and we're gonna come up through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And now we're going to take this tag end, lay it back over this portion here, and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you don't overlap. 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to hold this tag end from getting away. That looks pretty good. I'm going to hold tension on this, and again, I'm going to grab a hold of my tag and give it a couple wraps here so I've got some grip. and then we're going to pull it through. Doing our best to keep it tight. I'm going to grab some different pliers. We're going to go with something with some teeth. Those last pliers that I use are purposefully smooth. All right, ready? So now we're going to cinch this down. All right, there we go. Good and tight there. Okay, and then we're going to cut that off. Just like that. And you don't need to worry about burning that. That knot is going to be tight enough to hold that. All right, so now you can see here what we've done is we've done a double, essentially a double end loop, end serving on this material where the knock would be. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. We're going to put a knock in. That's where it basically was. I'm going to flip this over here. So that's basically where the knock was. And we want to tie that next one in just so there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. And just repeat the process, but we're going to go that way with it. So we're going to take that first piece of material that we had. You want it to be basically center. So what I mean by that is when you pull this out, they should be roughly the same length. That gives you enough material to kind of work with here. All right, so we're going to do the same thing, go in the opposite direction. We're going to tie this clove hitch in so it goes around and one side back through, and then the other side, you can see what I've got here. This one comes through. This one is going to feed through the opposite direction, going that way. And that's going to give you something that looks like this. Let's see if it's in the frame here. Okay, so there's your clove hitch. Pause it, zoom in, take a close look at what that is. And we're going to slide that up basically to where we want that knock to be. Not overly snug, but you don't want it to be jumping all over the place. So right about there. And if you can see the gap distance, I've got enough wiggle room in this string. It's very similar, so it's not tight, but there's enough wiggle room in there that it's going to be consistent. So and it's not going to give you knock pinch. So that's where we're going to start. So we're going to do 10 under, and then we're going to do 10 back served. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we're going to come over the top with our little knot here. You can see there, we're going to go over the top, and then we're going to feed our tag in, give it a little space here. Feed our tag in back through the big bridge, or whatever you want to call it, the loop. Then we're going to do 10 more wraps inside of that. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're going to lay our tag end over this, and we're going to wrap right over top of that tag end, come in here. So 1, keeping tension on the string. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I know this video is going to get boring and repetitive, but you know what? It's okay. So now you can see I've got my tag in here, and I've got my loop. I'm going to grab these better pliers that got some grip. Grab it by the end, give it a couple twists in there so it's tight. All right, and then we're gonna pull that through. Ready? Hopefully you can see this. We're gonna pull down, holding the loop, all the way down, all the way down. There we go. And then this is when you wanna cinch it up. So grab hold of the bow, pull it. That's very tight. Okay. Okay. Now we can cut our tag end. Again, same thing. Don't cut your string, don't cut anything else. Give it some, if you give it some up pressure with the blade, up pressure, pop, comes right off. All right, so now we just have one more to do. We're gonna check our Nock Fit just one more time. Should be fine. Yep, looks good. Bad thing is I can tell I probably should have just changed that center serving, but we'll be all right. And the key to this is go straight over the end of the knot. Don't come into where the serving is, and don't go too far. Just come straight up, just like you would do a normal serving. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now I've got my 7 initial wraps here, just like the other side. Now we're going to back serve 7 more. The reason I like to use this white material is because typically always your center serving or your string is going to be dark. With this white, you can see what you're doing. You can make sure that the wraps are good. They're where they need to be. And you don't end up making mistakes because you can't see the thread. So this one is going to go backwards the opposite way. Okay, so we're going to go 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're going to lay our tag end over and complete the back serve here. So 1, make sure it's tight up against that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That might have been 6, 7. Okay, close enough. All right, again, I've got my tag end and I've got my loop. I'm gonna grab our tag end here. This is a little bit shorter. 1, 2, 3. Give it something to grab a hold of here, and we're gonna pull through, keeping tension on the string. Ready? Sweet. There we go. All right, so we've completed, I think, what is the best way to tie in soft knots for a D-loop. What you're creating is like a little hill as you go up. So it's obviously your center serving is the lowest point, and then you've got a little bit of the 10 wrap here, and then you've got the 7 wrap over here. So when you go to put the D-loop on, you can actually put that D-loop right in the center of this material, and that's going to give you a really strong D-loop location that's not going to come off, and it gives you just enough where your knock isn't going to slide out of the way. You can see that's really good and tight in there, and still comes off solid. We're going to do this real quick. I didn't even measure to see how long her D-loop was. So we're going to start with 5 inches of material here, and I'm going to show you how I put my D-loop on. The most important thing, I think, when putting a D-loop on, if you ever use fire around a D-loop or a bowstring, never, ever, ever burn from down under. Always burn from the top and melt your ends. Don't burn your ends, melt your ends. And what I mean by that is just get it warm enough where it's gonna melt. Try not to let it catch on fire. All right. That was actually just the end of the spool. I've got roughly 5 inches of D-loop material here, and I'm going to mushroom out the end of this. I like this stuff because I believe it has a nylon core in it. But basically we're gonna mushroom that out just about like that. we're gonna melt that end down until it's nice and round. And I'm just spinning it in my fingers. Nice and round here. Don't let it catch on fire. Just melt it. If it does catch on fire, put it out real quick because I think it makes it brittle. And I'm gonna flatten it just a hair. Again, I'm not burning it. I'm melting it. There you go. That's a little bit better. You can see there now. A little bit flatter. It is not burned though. As you can tell, it never caught on fire and, you know, doing the whole thing and putting it out. That was never part of that. Since she's a right-handed shooter, you know, there's a lot of hubbub about this, but the release she uses is actually an old true ball. You can see this is the true ball release she uses, and it's a swivel head, and it's also a caliper style. So there's really not much need to have this a super specific direction. So this is nice and smooth. The way that you want to have this is you actually want to have, you know, when you're looking down, I'll try to do it this way. You want to have it so it's more like this, not like this. So we're going to start on the bottom here, and we're going to go on the what would be the right hand side of the bow, and we're going to come up and around and then back up through. So you can see what I've got here. And then this end is going to come up through. So essentially what we have is the D-loop on the right hand side on the bottom here. And we're going to pull that down until that knot starts to form. I'm not going to pull it overly tight or anything yet, but that's going to be the first portion. And then the next one, we're gonna come to the other side. So we're gonna go on the front, we're gonna wrap it around, and I'm just gonna do a quick trial run here. I think it's gonna be too long, but it might not be. And then back up and under. Okay, so this is where we're at right now, and I think that's gonna be a pretty good length for this D-loop once it gets cinched. So what I'm gonna do is, this was a 5-inch knot, or a 5-inch piece of cord. I'm just gonna take this, cut that end off right there, and I'm gonna mushroom out this end, and we're just gonna go with a 5-inch length. And all I'm doing is just cutting the pre-burned, there we go, pre-burned portion of that off. So now we're gonna go and we're gonna do the exact same thing we just did on this end. Gonna mushroom it out a little bit, and we're gonna melt it. Again, one thing that I do not do when I put my D-loops on is I never, you see a lot of guys tie it, and they tie it in place and then they cut it off. They cut the material right at the knot and then they burn it. I never do that. I don't think that's smart. I think it eventually just weakens it. All right, I'm gonna give that a second, then flatten it. And sometimes with this, you can see it's like a little bit, it's not as smooth as you want. Just hit it with heat just again for a second. Turn it around, go from the other end. If you can visibly see, anything that looks sharp, that's pretty good. Redo it or fix it before you go do anything else. So let's see. Use this, you can see what that looks like. So it's rounded and it's slightly flat. Now we're gonna go on to the other side of this, and we're gonna tie this in just like a normal D-loop would be tied. It's gonna get a little bit tight, and that's on purpose. So pull that down and under. This is the part that might be a little tricky. I like it to be tight, like almost too hard to get it in. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these pliers that are not sharp. I'm gonna grab this end so you can see it instead of me putting my fingers in the way. So I'm gonna force this end through that loop. Try to. There we go. So now we have the D-loop tied in place, or it's almost tied in place. We have the D-loop tied, and all we have to do is kind of work it and put it in the place where it needs to be over those soft knots. Okay. So what I'm looking for is I want that D-loop, the D-loop material, let's see. I want that D-loop material. There should be a little bit of white here on both sides. You can see this side where there's a gap. There's white here and there's white on the outside. And on the opposite side, if I spin that, I want it to be basically the same. And you can, at this point, you can move it around. So if I turn that, you can see that there's white showing, and that's what I want. I want it to, there should be a little bit of a gap there. So this is where it should be. When you go to tie this down, you know, you can use fancy pliers, whatever. I'll just use these to cinch it. But essentially what you're looking at is you want to make sure that that D-loop knot is over top of those servings, because what it's going to do is part of that right here, part of that D-loop is actually going to be on the low side where we did the 10 wraps, not the 7. And that's going to, number one, reduce knock pinch greatly. And it's going to prevent this D-loop from sliding left and right. So that's pretty much it. At this point, all we have to do is put our pliers in here and just slowly start to open this up. And before you get too far, check it. Make sure your knot is coming together this way on both of them. And do the same thing again. And we're just going to open it up slowly. There we go. Let me grab, let's see. Grab these Eastons. And we'll just do the last little tightening. Okay. So now she's got a new D-loop put on. Basically about the same size, I guess, pretty well. We'll have to go back and look, but new D-loop with the back serving soft knots, and she's ready to hunt. So I hope that was helpful. If you like it, tell your buddies about it. Do it on your own bow. It saves a lot of headache, and I think it's a better way to tie a D-loop. So like the video, give me a subscribe if you want to. I'm going to shoot for 1,000 subscribers here going forward. And yeah, good shooting and good luck this fall. So thanks for watching.